everyone. Welcome back to Declassified. I'm Danielle, and I'm a wedding and brand photographer based here in St. Louis, Missouri, and I share photography content. So if you like that kind of thing, you've come to the right spot. But today we are doing another fun episode. It is part 2 of me reacting to your wedding horror stories. And if it's anything like episode 1, this episode is not going to disappoint as well. I mean, in part 1, we talked about body fluids. We talked about fecal matter. People were vomiting. Like, these stories are insane, truly. And I just want to say thank you for everybody who wrote in and shared their stories. So if you guys have any stories of your own, feel free to drop them in the comments, but let's just dive right into this episode. The bride and the groom are running late. No big deal. I have the guests get seated about 5 minutes after the ceremony was supposed to start because the very drunk sister of the groom tells me the wedding party is all on site and ready to go. Never trust a drunk person. Mistake number 1. 30 minutes after the wedding was supposed to begin, the bride and the groom arrive and proceed to do a first look. The photographer was awesome and did everything she could to make up for lost time. 45 minutes late, we get the wedding party lined up, and I realize the bride's mom is nowhere to be found. Everybody's lost in this wedding so far. The bride's dad had passed away, so it was important for her mom to be there. This is a hotel, so we called the mom on her room phone and cell phone multiple times with no answer. And with the bride's permission, I sent hotel security and the hotel manager up to her room to fetch the bride's mom so we could begin the ceremony. She had been ready for an hour and was just chatting on the phone. Whoa, mom foul. The ceremony finally began 55 minutes late. This is just one of the many reasons I always recommend my couples hire a planner. Wait, hold on. I can't imagine being late for my own daughter's wedding. I feel like you should know, like as the mom, you should know, like whenever, if I have a daughter someday and she's getting married, best believe I know that timeline. It's printed out. It's in my pocket. I have it on my phone. I know exactly where everybody needs to be. I'm like, my daughter is going to have the best absolute day. I'm not up in my room chatting it away on the phone with whomever. And it's like everybody that's important to you is already at that wedding. Like, who could she possibly be talking to? That's my other question, is like, who is she talking to? Why does she not know the timeline? Why is she not concerned? Does she not know what time it is? I have so many questions. And if I was that bride, I'd be like, Mom, I'm gonna kill you. And plus, like, this would never be me because I absolutely hate talking on the phone. I'm like, if you're gonna call me, somebody better be dead. Otherwise, you could send me a text. A month ago, I had a 2-hour away wedding in Illinois. On my calendar, I had Sunday down for the date. ... Luckily, I texted the bride on Saturday about the following day, and it was on Saturday. No, I had like 5 minutes to get ready and rush there, and I got there at the nick of time. I have no idea how I was so disorganized. They never knew. Dude, that is my literal nightmare. Having a date wrong. Can you imagine? Like, this is why contracts are so important. It's like, here's your date. Make sure it's right so nobody gets disorganized and shows up on the wrong day. I'm really glad they didn't find out though. I'm glad that you checked in. Like, you should be doing that. You should always be checking in with your couple. Calendar systems, people. You guys need calendar systems. That's why you get contracts, calendar systems. I can luckily say I've never had a date for a wedding wrong. Knock on wood. We're knocking on wood. I was a bridesmaid in my cousin's wedding. She got married at midnight on Halloween, so they swapped it and had the reception first. Wait, the reception with the ceremony following? That's strange. Starting around 8 p.m., the reception was a costume party, and then the bridal party got changed into pretty clothes for the ceremony. This was over 10 years ago, but I still remember the insanity to this day, and we use it as a benchmark for every other wedding in the family. These are just some of the highlights. There's like several bullet points. 1, the bride is vegan and the only food there was candy. Nothing but candy for 4 hours. Oh no. My aunt, mother of the bride, snuck in a full leg of lamb and was pulling family members off the dance floor into the kitchen to secretly offer them some. Like, hey, you guys want some secret lamb from the kitchen? Can you imagine, like, you just walk in, you open the kitchen door and there's just some lady like holding like a leg of lamb and she's like, want some? Oh my gosh. 2, there was a belly dancer performance that was not explained to anyone. Strange. 3, the mother of the bride was afraid of bad juju because they were getting married at midnight on Halloween. So she brought a huge thing of sage. It looked like a massive joint as big as my wrist. while we were all getting changed out of our costumes and getting the pretty hair and makeup done. My makeup was done by a girl dressed like a blue avatar, tail and all. The mother of the bride decides to hang the dress from a sprinkler. Oh no, directly below a fire alarm and light the sage joint on fire in an attempt to smoke and cleanse the dress. This is bad, but I'm just like picturing this woman like with her big sage joint, just like. My other aunt and I very quickly noticed what was happening, and my other aunt tackled the mother of the bride to prevent her from setting off. Is this the same woman who came in with like her own turkey leg? She's coming in with a sage joint and a turkey leg. Like, I like this girl. Who is this girl? She likes to party. My other aunt tackled the mother of the bride to prevent her from setting off the fire alarms in this old historic estate house. Number 4, the father of the bride didn't get the memo that the bridal party was changing for the ceremony, so he walked his daughter down the aisle dressed as a hobo because that was his Halloween costume. I can't. Can you imagine having those photos and like you're in your beautiful wedding dress and then your dad looks like a hobo? Like, that is your fault. That is your own fault. Like, you dug your own grave. Like, you should not have a Halloween wedding and like flip-flopped your ceremony and your reception. Like, you deserve that hobo photo. And lastly, when the bride went to cut the very expensive vegan wedding cake the mother of the bride had paid for, she took the knife, grabbed it like a horror movie villain because Halloween, and proceeded to stab the cake repeatedly. Lesson learned, don't make your guests dress up or you could potentially have the weirdest photos to look back on. Okay, next story. During speeches, the maid of honor revealed to the whole audience how she'd never forget the time that the bride called her and told her about the first time she and the groom had sex. Whoa, I don't think that's speech material. Meanwhile, the groom's mother was under the impression that they were waiting till marriage and then had to dance the mother-son dance immediately after that. I had secondhand embarrassment for sure. Ooh, that's spicy. That's spicy for sure. Which I think is just an important note. Like, if you have people who are making speeches for you, be like very particular about their off-limit topics that they cannot talk about, or else somebody's going to get hammered, they're going to throw you under the bus, or they're going to say something stupid in front of all the people that you love in your life, all your friends and family. So if you have one of those friends in your life, just have a little quick convo beforehand. I think that's smart, or else you're going to be setting yourself up for some embarrassment. I was doing this bride's makeup and she's so hungover, reeks of alcohol, and I'm disgusted. She stops me halfway through her makeup and says she needs to go throw up. The bathroom was 5 feet away. We hear her puking for like 10 to 15 minutes. Blech. She comes back and sits down without brushing her teeth or getting gum. I offer her a piece of gum and she goes, "Why? Girl, why?" Like, why? Really? And I said, well, because you just threw up. Needless to say, I changed my contract to say I can refuse service if people are hungover or throwing up. Gross. Like, barf a million times. Barf. Like, I'm so glad I'm not a makeup artist. Can you imagine like somebody puking and then you like have to be up in their face, like doing their makeup, and they're just like, hi. That would be so awful. Like, be like, bitch, no, you're taking this piece of gum or I'm not working with you, or you're brushing your teeth or whatever. Like, also, who are these people that are getting hammered before their wedding day? Like, you're not going to be able to enjoy your wedding day if you're hungover. That's the last thing that I would want on my wedding day. Like, I want to be spry. I want to be like on top of the world. I want to feel like energized and like my best self. I don't want to be hungover and sick and puking on my wedding day. Like, if you're doing that, you got other problems, and maybe you want to ask yourself, do I really want to get married at this point in my life? Or am I trying to hide something? Am I trying to self-sabotage this entire wedding? Choices and consequences. Next, I was a maid of honor at a wedding, and a fellow bridesmaid decided that she was going to start drinking at 11 a.m. Again. With the drinking. But this time it's a bridesmaid. While we were getting ready, no one knew she was sneaking into the bathroom to drink. She's closet drinking, even better. She then decided that while the bride and groom were dancing, she at this point was extremely intoxicated, wanted to show everyone at our table her wedding video. This girl sounds like the worst friend, trying to make it about herself. That's why she's getting drunk, because she's upset. She's like, I don't get the spotlight. I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to ruin this day. And I'm also going to show everybody about how my wedding is so great. She made a point to say her dresses were nicer. I bet they're not friends anymore. How much fun she had, blah, blah, blah. I point out to her that this might not be the right time to watch it, but I happily would later. She was not amused. She was loudly remarking that she couldn't believe these two were actually getting married and didn't think they should be together. She then crawled under the table during the first dance and vomited in my shoes. WTF. I hadn't noticed until I tried to put them on quickly to go up and give my speech. Such filth. Then she wanted to go dancing after dinner, which she hadn't eaten, and fell in the middle of the dance floor. Pulled off her underwear and said, "Catch this." I'm going to reiterate what this girl said, like filth. At this point, I had had enough and told her she needed to remove herself and go back to the bridal suite to sober up. Someone came up to me a little while later and told me they needed help with her since they were intoxicated as well, and I had not been drinking. This girl writing in this story, like, you are a saint. This is when the bride realized what was going on, and I had worked really hard to make sure she didn't again. Like, you win the bridesmaid award. Like, if you're not maid of honor at this point, you deserve it. The bridesmaid was vomiting profusely into the champagne bucket like a real champ. It was 8 p.m. So I did what any person would do. I asked a man to pick her drunken ass up and take her to my car because she was going to go to her hotel room. And then you have the kindness in your heart to take this drunk lady back to her hotel. Like, you deserve an award at this point. Like, you're just trying to make your friend's wedding not be ruined. She then continued to vomit all over the inside of my car, and I stayed with her all night to make sure she didn't choke. I sent her the invoice for the detailing service. She politely declined to pay. You win some, you lose some. Girl, you're a saint. Like I said, like, you are the friend. You are a ride or die girl. Like, I feel for you in this moment. You did everything in your power to make sure your friend's wedding went off without a hitch, without any problems, and that this girl didn't ruin it. And I applaud you for that. And you know what? You can sleep at night knowing that you weren't the terrible friend who got drunk and tried to make it all about herself. And you were the friend who tried to solve the situation, and you actually probably helped somebody not die from being too intoxicated and your poor car. But like you said, you win some, you lose some. You win the Friend of the Year award, that's for sure. Okay, next story. I'm a wedding photographer. I was at one really fancy wedding a couple years ago. Typical outdoor deal at a swanky location in the middle of nowhere. The place was really nice, had a large concrete stairway flanked by water fountains that led down to the altar area, so the bride could be seen by all like she was ascending from heaven. The ceremony begins and the bridal party comes down and takes their places. Then the bride appears with her father. She takes 3 or 4 steps down the concrete steps and her This does not end well, guys. She takes 3 or 4 steps down the concrete and her shoe twists on her and she stumbled down a good 12 feet or more and busted out the majority of her teeth in the fall. So much blood all over her. This puts horror in wedding horror stories. I can't even imagine. Oh my gosh, like you fall on concrete steps and you don't have any teeth and you're like, oh my God. And you're just like bleeding all over your white, beautiful dress. Ooh. Ooh, stairs aren't always a good idea, I will say. Like, I feel like she set up the story so beautifully. Like, it sounded beautiful, her walking down the stairs like she's descending from heaven. It's like the staircase from heaven, and the angels are singing, and the birds are chirping, and the sun is shining. But in reality, you have to walk with a very large dress, potentially a train, in heels, and you can't really see where your feet are stepping. And that's extremely dangerous. I mean, it's hard to walk in a wedding dress, even on normal, even ground. I say the same thing about aisle runners. I'm like, girl, you do not need an aisle runner, especially in the grass. Like, you're just gonna trip and fall over that. Like, I have had brides fall and trip down the aisle. I have photo proof of this. And it's funny in the moment. And like, luckily most of these brides that it has happened to, like, they just laugh it off. But it's really not ideal. Like, you don't want to trip on your wedding day and fall. Nobody wants to do that. So avoid stairs, avoid aisle runners, and just walk like a normal human being. With the place being so isolated, it took a good 40 minutes for ambulance to arrive, and she was in so much intense pain. Ultimately, she was okay, and I got an email from them weeks later with the rescheduled date. This time, there were no stairs anywhere in sight. But what happened to her teeth? Like, did she have to get veneers? Like, I have so many questions. Is she okay? Is she a permanent damage? Is she a PTSD? Did she have to pay her photographer twice? Like, she had to pay for a whole nother wedding? Okay, last story. And I feel like This is also a story about poo. In last episode, in part 1, we also ended the episode with a story about poop. And here we are. And I don't know why this is happening again, but let's just do this, guys. We're in this together. I work as an event planner. It was the wedding of 2 fairly wealthy families, and the bride had decided on a rather rural, shabby chic aesthetic. The reception, she decided, would take place on a family property in a historic barn. This caused a huge flurry of issues between having to have the barn cleaned, the fact that we need auxiliary tents as the barn wasn't large enough, and the fact that the property lacked electricity and running water. The latter was solved with a bank of generators, tubs of water for catering, and a side tent with porta-johns hidden inside. This sounds like a big ordeal already. The bride had, to be honest, been quite a bridezilla. I don't like that word, but I feel like this might be appropriate. But it's my job to deal with those things. At this point, the ceremony had ended. Cocktail hour is shutting down. The professional photos were taken. We were prepping to transition to the entrance of the bridal party, which would be immediately followed by first dance and cake cutting. During this, the dinner would be staged, so every aspect was being fairly carefully timed out. I was speaking to the caterer when I happened to glance over and see the most curious blend of expressions pass over the bride's face. And she frantically waved down my assistant. A few moments later, my headset beeped on, and my assistant said, "We have an issue." Turns out the bride had gambled on a fart and lost in a big way. Gambled on a fart. That's like the best sentence. This isn't gonna go well. Now, the bride was wearing a huge full ball gown with a fitted bones strapless top and a sort of embellished mesh. Sounds very intricate. Underneath, she had a shaper garment and hoops and slips. We had already realized there was zero way of her going to the bathroom. We had already had issues getting her into a limo, and having her use porta-johns meant one of us would have to get personal. That was my assistant's job. Oh no. I'd be like, I did not sign up for this. I quit. I radioed to everyone to expect a 15-minute delay, and they headed towards the tent. The 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, my earpiece beeps on. The previous issue is more than we anticipated. I ran over to find my assistant looking horrified. The bride, it turns out, had been using some health shakes in an attempt to fix last-minute bloating. This had mixed poorly with the cocktails from earlier, and she had eaten a fairly decent breakfast. Oh God, I'm gonna barf. The substance that had come out of her body as a result defied explanation. It was slimy, oily, even with stringy bits and the consistency of hair gel. No. Not only had it been a rather profound accident, but the smell was unrivaled. Generally, a substance no human body should emit. That's when I quit. I'm like, girl, I'm out. That's where I draw the line. Like, I don't do poo. I don't do other people's poo. But the thing that set it over the edge was that the shaper the bride wore was a latex deal that came down over the thighs and up to her bra. Meaning, like, she pooed and it's like everywhere. It's like contained. Waterproof, the poo had just sort of filled it like a water balloon of horror. My assistant had opened up the snap crotch and just released the evil trickling down the bride's thighs. No. My assistant quickly sealed it back up. She's like, nope, click, back up there. You're good. Walk it off, girl. And she and the bride vainly tried to wipe up the goo dry with toilet paper. This just spread it around, so they decided to give up. Now I have a shell-shocked assistant and a crying bride. You can smell her 4 feet away. The bride just flipped out that she's making her guests wait, that she had a choreographed dance waiting to happen, and she needs to be introduced now. Can you just imagine? Like, somebody's literally in a bodysuit of their own poo, and they're like, the show must go on. And you're like, girl, are you sure? Is it really worth it? If that was me, if I was that bride, I'd be like, girl, strip me down. I am taking a bath right now. I don't care if you have a tub. I will crawl into the kitchen sink. Get this shit off of me. I'm just looking at her manicured nails. Residue of diarrhea are just embedded in her nail bed. I start trying to scrape the poo out with a fabric stain wipe while the bride insists that the show must go on immediately. Oh, this is dedication for this bride. I give in that this is an issue which will have to wait and signal to start introductions. The groom looks vaguely disconcerted by his wife's new odor, but I tell my assistant to distract him until they take the floor. Introductions happen, the dance starts, and we find some fresh horror. The dance was a choreographed affair, and as the groom spun his bride around, hand on her waist, he is squishing the poo up the sides of the waist trainer, up and out the back of the waistband. Oh my goodness, this story just keeps getting worse and worse. To our horror, we watched as an oily stain spread across the mid-back of the gown. As we were still cringing from this, the groom sets his hand firmly in the middle of the poo stain. I'm done. I'm done with the story. Action had to be taken as soon as the couple left the dance floor. It was obvious, and I left my assistant in charge while I made preparations. She kept radioing me, the stain is spreading. The stain is spreading. She's like, mayday, mayday, the stain is spreading. She could smell the poo from her spot by the DJ. They were cutting the cake now. They were feeding the cake to each other, both now with shit-stained fingers. Each was looking downright repulsed. I mean, for better or for worse, right? As I left the dance floor, I had someone rush wet naps to the groom and to bring me the bride. The support tent was closed down for me, and I pulled a tub of clean water from the caterers. She walked in to find me in dish gloves and a poncho, like American Psycho. I really hope this coordinator got a tip, because wow. For 5 minutes, I was sponging down a sobbing, naked bride while I questioned every life decision that led to this point. The diarrhea was everywhere, spread in a thin layer across her body. It must have been the most disgusting thing I've ever dealt with. With her clean, I threw away the waist shaper and scrubbed down the $15,000 wedding gown, and the inner lining was a loss. I completely cut it out. Dressed again and offered a Xanax, the bride was a little worse for wear, except for missing dinner. The support tent smelled like a sewer and was just closed the remainder of the event. The groom was a sport, never directly saying anything, but asking if we could cancel the garter toss as he didn't really want to go under the skirt. Dude, I don't blame you. Pictures from the event appeared in a magazine. Still photos away from the smell were beautiful. Wow, that story takes the cake. I just have to say, everybody in this story, props to you, because the party kept going. Like, the bride is like, no, this isn't gonna stop me. I'm still gonna go have my choreographed dance and I'm gonna spin in the air and nobody's gonna know. And the groom was like, you know what, honey? I love you for better or for worse. They probably look back on this and laugh their heads off. I can imagine they're probably still together. Like, if you love somebody that much, like, you're going to dance with them even if they've got poo on them. Like, you love them for sure. These people are like still married. I know it 100%. And I love that the photos are still in a magazine and they're beautiful. It's like, just goes to show that if stuff happens on a wedding day, your guests most likely don't know about it. So the moral of the story here, with both part 1 and part 2, is just roll with the punches. If something happens on your wedding day, if it's a small hiccup or it's a big hiccup where you literally shit your pants, just roll with it. Because in the end, it's just going to be a funny memory that you look back on. And in reality, no wedding is perfect. You know, something always happens, and you can't go into a wedding day thinking that everything has to be buttoned up or it's going to ruin the day, because stuff happens. People are human beings and we're not perfect. We make mistakes. Things go wrong. Sometimes things are late. Sometimes things are forgotten, and that's okay. But the attitude that you have is what matters. If you have a good attitude about it, that is going to save you your joy and happiness. So don't let these little mistakes rob you of your joy. Just play it off, laugh it off. And, you know, like this couple, they can probably look back and really laugh on this moment in their lives and maybe also kind of cringe. So lesson learned, like, don't try diet shakes before your wedding. Don't try to lose a little bit of extra pounds through laxatives on your wedding day, because you might bargain for more than what you ask for, and it might not turn out so well. And shout out to this wedding planner for sharing this story. I hope you got a big fat tip. And shout out to all you guys who shared your stories. I really appreciate everybody writing in. These were really fun to react to, and who knows, maybe we'll have to do another series of this in the future. If you have any horror stories of your own, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. I put out photography content every week or every 2 weeks. It's really whatever I feel like. I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys always watching and supporting me. I'll see you guys next time for another episode of Declassified. Bye, guys.